I lived in a small town just outside Houston, Texas. Not the part filled with skyscrapers, traffic noise, and crowded sidewalks. This place was quieter. The kind of area where you know the shape of every tree on your street, and you can tell when a streetlight is about to flicker because it always buzzes first. Evenings here feel still, and people stay indoors after sunset. I don't know why, but probably because of fear. When I moved here, I thought the stillness would be good for me. I had just switched to working remotely, so I figured peace and quiet would help me focus. Because at that time in my life, I was deep in job burnout. I worked long hours reviewing claims and processing paperwork that never seemed to end. The only thing that kept me grounded was my dog, Tucker. He's a small mixed breed with warm brown fur and big eyes that always look like he's trying to hunt. Back then, I thought it was just him being a nervous little dog. I didn't take it seriously. One Saturday, I woke up with a heavy mind and decided to clean my whole place just to feel something change. I cleaned everything. I washed the curtains, pulled books off shelves and dusted behind them, scrubbed the kitchen sink until the metal looked brighter. I even moved the couch to sweep underneath where crumbs and dog hair had gathered into little piles. It felt good to move with purpose and control my surroundings, even in small ways. Eventually, I stood in my living room and stared at the space. It still felt empty. I wanted something with character, something that would make the space feel like a home. I sat down for a while, thinking about what I could put in the place to make it look alive. After a while, I remembered a thrift shop about 3 blocks from my apartment. I'd been there a few times before, mostly to kill time. They always had strange items like old books and paintings of strange people and objects. I got up and made my way to the shop. When I got there, the windows were dusty as usual, and the sign outside just said, "Second Chances" in faded red paint. I walked slowly through the aisles, scanning the shelves and tables. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just something that would make the room feel alive. I thought about getting a plant stand, maybe a framed picture, something harmless. But then I noticed a sculpture on a corner shelf near the back. It was carved from dark wood. It showed a figure sitting cross-legged, hands resting lightly on its knees. The carving was smooth and skillful, but the face had no features, just a smooth shape where expression should have been. I don't know why I picked it up, but something about it made me stop and hold it longer than I intended. The shop owner walked over then. She stood beside me and watched me look at it. "Interesting piece," she said quietly. I asked where it came from. She paused, like she had to think about the answer, then said, "Someone brought it in when she was traveling." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. I just nodded. I bought it without thinking much about it. I carried it home, wrapped in paper, feeling oddly proud that I had found something unique. When I placed it on the shelf in my living room, next to a plant that was slowly dying, the room didn't feel empty anymore. But looking back, I think that was the exact moment everything changed. A few nights after I brought the sculpture home, I woke up to a low, steady sound I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't a bark. It was a growl that came from deep in his chest. I got up and followed the sound into the living room. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow of the street light leaking through the blinds. Tucker stood tense in the middle of the room looking at the sculpture. He didn't blink. He didn't shift. He didn't look at me when I came near him. It was as if something about that figure had his full attention. I bent down and picked him up, and even then he didn't break his stare. I could feel his little body shaking. Tucker refused to sleep in the living room after that. Normally, he liked resting on the rug near the couch, where he could see the front door. But that night, he followed me into my bedroom and curled right against my leg. He didn't move once. I just didn't want to think about it. But then the second night came. That was when I first heard the whisper. It happened when I was lying in bed. The apartment was quiet. I was just starting to drift off when I heard something faint. Just a soft sound like air being drawn through someone's mouth. It sounded as though someone was standing right by the doorway, breathing. Not too loud, but heavy. I sat up and listened. My heart was already racing, but I tried to stay logical. Maybe the air vents kicked on, maybe the fridge was cycling. I got out of bed and checked every room. I checked the kitchen and the bathroom. I pressed my ear against the front door, but heard no sound. Every night, I started noticing things moving. At first, it was easy to explain. I would wake up and notice that the TV remote was on the couch instead of the coffee table. Or I'd find my keys on the kitchen counter when I was sure I left them near the door. I blamed stress, fatigue, the fog of burnout that makes you forget things. But then I started noticing objects I hardly ever touched in different places. A notebook I hadn't used in weeks was lying open on the dining table. A candle I kept for decoration was sitting on the windowsill. A coaster was on the floor. It no longer felt like I was misplacing anything. It felt like something else had started to interact with the space. One evening, when I came inside after taking Tucker out, I walked into the living room and immediately stopped. The sculpture was no longer on the shelf. It was sitting in the exact center of the living room floor, perfectly upright, balanced, as though someone had placed it there gently and intentionally. I stood there for a long moment. My skin crawled just looking at it, but I couldn't leave it sitting there. When I finally reached down to pick it up, I expected it to be cool, like wood usually is, but it wasn't. It was warm. How could that be? The apartment was cold. I hadn't turned on the heater. There was no reason for it to feel like that. I picked it up and put it back on the shelf. That night, I didn't let myself think deeply about it. I was tired. I went to bed and slept. But that night, I had the dream. In the dream, I was sitting on my couch, but I felt something behind me. I tried to turn my head, but I couldn't move. My whole body felt frozen. The only thing I could see was a tall figure that stood directly behind me. Same shape as the sculpture, breathing, slow, deep, and close. When I woke up, my chest hurt. It felt like someone had been pressing both hands down on me while I slept. Tucker wasn't beside me. I found him in the kitchen. He kept avoiding walking through the living room at all. I picked him up because he kept trying to back away from it. Standing in that kitchen, I made my mind to leave the apartment that day. I walked to the front door, unlocked it, and grabbed the handle. When I pulled, it didn't move. Not even a little. At first, I thought maybe my hand slipped, so I tried again. I tried to pull harder this time. The door refused to open, as if someone or something was holding it shut from the other side. I stepped backwards, my eyes scanned the room, and that was when I saw a tall figure in the glass reflection of the sliding balcony door, standing behind the couch. My breath caught in my throat. I was afraid that if I moved, it would move. Then, from the corner of my eye, without looking directly at it, I noticed the sculpture on the shelf tilt its head. Out of fear, I don't remember walking to the couch. I fell to the ground and passed out. It was as if someone turned off a switch inside my mind. The next thing I knew, it was morning. The sculpture was back on the shelf. That morning, I told myself I had to return the sculpture back to where I got it. I stood up and moved close to where the sculpture was. I was afraid at first, but eventually I picked it up and left my house with Tucker. When I got to the shop where I bought the sculpture, it looked abandoned, but the door was open. I walked in and looked around to see if someone was inside. To my surprise, no one was there. I called out, "Hello?" No response. I told myself I wouldn't bring this thing back to my house. Without hesitation, I placed the sculpture on a shelf and left the shop.